Good morning, Pa. All right. So, I was left in a stupor over all these things exploding in my head about different symbolisms between um, the divine feminine um, and symbols that are being mentioned. But, more importantly, we should get into. Oh, golly, yeah, there was everything about the women being brought into the abode first before the men. Um, the women likely being the ones who helped to give blessings, things like that. The seven women having it to be with beatitudes and other blessings of wisdom, power, and authority. The seven women holding upon one man, kind of blessings to make him um, calling for Isaiah. Anyways, all that, wow, that was a bunch that I was just like, it was just amazing to me. All right, I want to get through the rest of this. It's a holiday, so it might be a longer one, but I want to get through that. I think we can. All right, we are in the section, Woe unto them that calls evil good. We are torn away from images of redemption, and maybe even marriage, to be shown the apostasy again. Isaiah begins with a strong image and a shocking word. Quote, "Now I will sing to my well-beloved a song of my beloved touching his vineyard. My well-beloved hath a vineyard in a very fruitful hill, and he fenced it and gathered out the stones thereof and planted it with the choicest vine, and built a tower in the midst of it, and also made a winepress therein. And he looked that it should bring forth grapes, and it brought forth wild grapes." 5:1-2. The first word here in Hebrew is Asherah. Now, if you're thinking that sounds similarly, Ashira with an I, and if you think that sounds awfully familiar to Asherah, you're correct. The only difference in unpointed Hebrew is that Ashira has a jot, a yod, the tiniest letter in Hebrew alphabet that isn't Asherah. And here is it in Hebrew. Remember, it's right to left instead of left to right, and so the aleph on the right is where it starts, A-esh, Asherah. It's literally that little tiny mark in between, in the middle. The top one is the first word of Isaiah 5. The bottom one is the name of the goddess. That little apostrophe-looking thing makes the I sound, or I sound. Note that the arboreal scene described, a vineyard. This is going to be a chapter about Asherah, and in case you missed it, Isaiah will close out chapter 6 with additional clear Asherah reference to echo this one. "And now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem, and men of Judah, judge, I pray you, betwixt me and my vineyard. What could have been done more to my vineyard that I have not done in it? Wherefore, if I looked that it should bring forth grapes, it brought it forth wild grapes? And now go to, I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will take away the hedge thereof, and it shall be eaten up, and break down the wall thereof, and it shall be trodden down, and I will lay it to waste, and it shall not be pruned, nor digged, but there shall come up briars and thorns. I will also command the clouds that they rain no more upon it, for the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah his pleasant plant. And he looked for judgment, but behold, oppression for righteousness. But behold, a cry." Isaiah 5:3-7. Now, this now just hit me about the allegory of the olive trees as well in the Book of Mormon. Anyway, the apostasy of the vineyard is wild grapes, which will result in drought and destruction. But what are the wild grapes? Lack of judgment, mishpat, which means justice, and lack of righteousness, tzedakah. The vineyard with a tower in it is the house of Israel. It is also the temple. Matthew understands this when he has Jesus deliver a parable with the same setting. Oh, before we get on to that one, yesterday during church, I spent the second half of it poring over anything that I could around Enoch and Babylon, the Tower of Babylon. And it was interesting because it just talks about, at least in Genesis, I can't remember the name of the people, but they were coming from the east. They found a flat land, and they said, hey, let's build us a city and a tower, and that will reach to heaven, and we should make a name for ourselves so we're not scattered abroad. And then God comes down and says, yeah, it looks like they can do anything they put their mind to because they're all of one language. Let's confound it. It seems really strange. And this is why, when Jordan Peterson came up and was like, yeah, they were trying to build a tower to reach heaven. So, if a flood came again, they could do anything they want. Well, similarly, if you think of the tower and the name, if we sit there and go tower, wink, wink, and, make themselves a name, wink, wink, to have it be symbolized for temple stuff. Here it is that they're trying to build a tower that they can reach heaven and a name so that they're not scattered abroad. To me, that seems like there's key things that are being left out that are pointing towards the idea of they're trying to build a temple and circumvent the name of God, circumvent the gatekeeper, like take out Jehovah as the gatekeeper. Like he is the one who is the judge. He's been down here. And they want to make a name for themselves. Well, you can look at it that way, yes, and it's very similar, that basically the people want to have religious rights and worship in the way that they want, so they don't have to be accountable towards God. So, similar to what Jordan Peterson was saying. On the other hand, if you think of it as benignly as possible, that here they're trying to build a city and a tower, but what's with the tower? It seems to be that the tower trying to reach heaven was the thing that is likely to offend God, because he's like, they can all speak together and there's nothing that, they conceive of it, they can do it, kind of thing. And it's like, what is it that God's preventing by confounding their language? That's kind of the question that you're kind of left with. If you read it as benignly as possible, they're just making a city, they're making a tower that's supposed to touch heaven or reach heaven, and they need to make a name. Well, maybe they just wanted to have a cohesive city, like a major city-state, and they're all called under one name, one government, Maybe that's it. I mean, because that's the tower and the name thing going together is, I think, part of that mystery. And, or that puzzle. Because mysteries means ordinance in this one, so for that puzzle, because to me it seems that a tower and a name have a lot to do with the temple. On the other hand, if you talk about just tower and making a name for themselves, like creating a city, then what's with the point of having the tower try to reach heaven? There's just so many things that are like, this speaks about temple stuff. But then why would God want to confound it if men can do anything? I mean, he had no problem, zero problem with the city of Enoch. Nothing, no problem at all. Hey, there were people who were up in the mountains talking with God. God was living among them daily. There's no problem with building temples and etc. If you are doing things right, and you're living in the mountain, if you're living in the temple, and you're conversing and speaking with God day by day, no problem with it. And that was before the Tower of Babel. Heck, that was even before the flood. And so, why would he be not okay with it afterwards? Except if it was trying to avoid God or do it their own way. I mean, it just seems like that's the only reasonable explanation to fit all the pieces together, is that whether it was they were trying to build a tower so they could avoid any global flood, or whether they were trying to build a tower so that they could touch heaven, meaning that they were trying to build a temple, but unto themselves, and to make a name for themselves and circumvent what God's worship is, or to supplant God's worship. That would be a problem. And then basically prevent anyone from learning anything properly. That would be a problem. To literally take the main crux and cyclical religious liturgy so that people could learn, because they weren't literate, then corrupt it and make sure nobody knew the truth. There's a reason there was a great apostasy. Anyway, and just like, no, let's stop that here. Give people a chance, or give at least sections of people a chance. So, anyways, he was talking about the vineyard with the tower, and that is the house of Israel and is also the temple. Matthew understands this when Jesus has, when he has Jesus deliver a parable with the same setting. Hear another parable. Quote, hear another parable. There was a certain householder which planted a vineyard and hedged about it. Let me just start the whole thing over again. Hear another parable. There was a certain householder which planted a vineyard and hedged it round about, and digged a winepress in it, and built a tower, and let it out to husbandmen, and went into a far country. Oh, wow, it is literally the same setting. And when the time of the fruit drew near, he sent his servants to the husbandmen, that they might receive the fruits of it. And the husbandman took his servants, and beat one, and killed another, and stoned another. And again he sent other servants, more than the first, and they did unto them likewise. But last of all he sent unto them his son, saying, They will receive my son. But when the husbandmen saw the son, they said among themselves, This is the heir. Come, let us kill him. Let us seize on his inheritance. And they caught him, and cast him out of the vineyard, and slew him. And when the Lord thereof of the vineyard cometh, what will he do unto those husbandmen? They say unto him, He will miserably destroy those wicked men, and will let out his vineyard unto other husbandmen, which shall render him the fruits in their seasons. Jesus saith unto them, Did ye never read in the Scriptures, the stone which the builders rejected, the same is become the head of the corner? This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore I say unto you, the kingdom of God shall be taken from you, and given to a nation, bringing forth the fruits thereof. And whosoever shall fall on this stone shall be broken, but on whomsoever it shall fall, it will grind him to powder. Matthew 21:33-34. Wow. Golly, these parables are speaking a lot more than they used to. In this parable, rather than a drought, we have wicked workers in the vineyard. As the householder sends his servants and eventually his son, the workers murder them. The final verse of the parable makes it clear that Jesus is talking about the temple. The temple contains the foundation stone in the third room, which, having been rejected, will crush those who spurned it to powder. The kingdom of God, which is the holy of holies of the temple, after the true temple order, will be taken away. So we have a temple apostasy in Isaiah's day. We also have houses fused together and some houses left uninhabited. Woe, quote, woe to them, unto them that join house to house, that lay field to field, till there be no place that they may be placed alone in the midst of the earth. In mine ears, said the Lord of hosts, of a truth many houses shall be desolate, even great and fair without inhabitant. Isaiah 5:8-9. So that's just right after the parable of the vineyard in Isaiah's thing. So joining house to house sounds like gobbling up real estate until you realize that kings refer to individual rooms within Solomon's temple as houses. For instance, whoa, that makes more sense. So each room are houses. For instance, the Hekal is explicitly referred to as a house in 1 Kings 6:17, and the Debir is a house as well. In my Father's house there are many mansions. Yeah? Quote, sorry, that was my musing. Anyways, quote, and he has set the cherubims within the inner house, and they stretched forth the wings of the cherubims, so that the wing of one touched the one wall, and the wings of the other cherub touched the other wall, and their wings touched one another in the midst of the house. And he overlaid the cherubim with gold, and he carved all the walls with the house round about, and carved the figures of cherubim and palm trees and open flowers within and without. And the floor of the house he overlaid with gold within and without. 1 Kings 6:27-30. All these references to house use the Hebrew word bayat, which is the ordinary term for house, and the same word that appeared in Isaiah 5:8. The different rooms of Solomon's temple were different houses. The sin described here is the changing of the temple order, the blurring of the lines between one room of the temple and the next, which disrupts the inhabitants. We'll see specifically what this means below in this chapter. The ultimate end is that the inhabitants of the houses all leave, and those who have been doing the joining are finally left alone. This image is a description of the gods who live in the temple, leaving when their homes are violated, so that the violators are left holding the temple, but a temple in which no one any longer dwells. Yeah? The disruption of the houses and the driving away of their inhabitants leaves sterility, but of a peculiar kind. Quote, yea, 10 acres of a vineyard shall yield 1 bath, and the seed of an homer shall yield an ephah. That's Isaiah 5:10. A bath, bat, is a measure of volume for liquids. Bat is also the Hebrew word translated as daughter. Bat mitzvah. Yeah. Okay. Instead of bar mitzvah, it's a bat mitzvah. 10 acres of vineyard shall yield 1 bat, and the seed of an homer shall yield an ephah. Ooh, the Hebrew can be read to say that only 1 daughter remains. This jibes generally with the images of Isaiah 3, where the daughters of Zion are castigated for their wickedness, but all but one of them apostatize. A homer, chomer, 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 is a different measure of volume. And here, there is a play on words. There's a kind of priest in the kingdom of Judah that the Bible calls chomer. Plural is chemarim. We know very little about the chemarim. The King James translation calls them idolatrous priests. That's they get that from 2 Kings 23:5. But that seems to be only in order to justify Josiah's destroying them. And there's a footnote here for that. The verb used, hishbit, means that he exterminated the chemarim. He may in fact have murdered them. If the chemarim are also the priests of the high places, that's 2 Kings 23:5 and verse 20 as well. Intriguingly, although Genesis 14:18 calls Melchizedek a Kohen of El Elyon, the old Syriac Bible uses the Syriac equivalent of Chomer and calls him a Qumrah. Footnote again. And if these words Chomer or Chomer and Qumrah sound a little like Cumorah to you, well, they sound like that to me too. If the hill's name sounded priestly to the Nephites, If it meant something like Melchizedek's Hill, that might explain why they chose to make their last stand there in Mormon 6:2. That's why Mormons saw it as a good place in which to bury his work, Mormon 6:6. Dun dun dun! Bum bum bum! Comer, Qumra, Cumorah. Yeah, yeah. Just love that little footnote. The significance of the term is also odd. It's understood by the dictionary to mean the dark ones, or the gloomy ones. The gloomy ones? Really? It seems unlikely that a priestly order would give itself such a name, and much more probable that the enemies might rewrite the account to call the priests Kemerim, to slander them, especially if their real name was something else that sounded reasonably similar to Kemerim. A likely possibility is that the real name describing one of the priests was not Comer, but Chomer. The root of Chamar means to cover, and appears twice in Exodus 2:3. Let me read that again. Describing one of these priests was not Comer, but Chomer. The root Chamar means to cover, hence the dark ones, or the gloomy ones. And so they just change it just enough to add that little slide. It appears twice in Exodus 2:3, both in verb translated as daubed, and in the translated as slime. Wait. Whoa. Okay, let me finish this paragraph and I'll get into what just hit me. In other words, Moses' mother covered his ark with a covering. In Arabic, the same root appears in the word kehmar, which means a veil, whether worn by a person or otherwise, any covering. And the same roots in both Hebrew and Arabic refer to the fermentation of wine? What? The same roots? Okay. This is all out of left field to me. Okay, the reason why the daubed and slime thing comes up is because remember I was talking about the Tower of Babel? That's literally one of the things that they talk about. They're like, hey, we can make bricks. We've got slime. We can make a tower. We have bricks. We have a covering. We can make a tower that reaches to heaven. I cannot, in good conscience, sit here and think of it being a grand tower that reaches to heaven to avoid a flood. I think they were trying to build a temple and make a name for themselves, but not after the order of God, because he has no problem with temple worship. In fact, he encourages it. But if you're trying to do a temple that is not his and changes the names, I think that's what the Tower of Babel was about. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, but the same roots in both Hebrew and Aramaic referring to the fermentation of wine. I mean, that comes from Brown et al. Chamar and Kamara, which is just wow. Okay. Let me bring up what I was reading. That's Noah found grace. Okay, that was Moses chapter 8. What I wanted to go to is going to be in Genesis, because it's really funny that Joseph Smith's Genesis of Moses and such ends just before the Tower of Babel. Nuts! But let's go back to the Old Testament. Genesis, is it chapter 8? Flood ceases. It's 11, isn't it? Yeah, building the Tower of Babel. So everyone was of one speech. As they journeyed from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar, dwelt there. Here it says, they said one to another, go, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had a brick for stone, and slime they had for mortar. So this, both the verb translated as daubed and in the noun translated as slime. In other words, Moses' mother covered his ark with a covering. And in Arabic, this same root appears in the word kahmar, which means a veil. And so, what if they're talking about a veil here? And they said, go to, let us build a city and a tower. Again, that tower thing, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. So either they're referring to, I want to make a temple, but I want to do it in our own name instead of in the name of God, or I want to make a temple and we've got bricks, we've got coverings, we also need to make a name for ourselves. And I would think that either that's they want to do it in their own name, or they may be talking about we need to make ourselves a name, as in we need to be a united group to do whatever we want, similar to Gadianton robbers, that kind of thing. The secret oaths, same thing that Cain involved himself in, and which caused so much problems before the flood. Wow. That's ruthless. That's really bad. They just, people get warned about, it is literally the idea of forbidden knowledge. The idea that, yeah, you can know this so that you can avoid it, but the problem is that by you knowing it, it means that it's been passed on. Seeds of destruction, dude. Okay. Just a few words and boom, off like a rocket. Okay. So there's a mysterious order of priesthood that Josiah violently suppressed. It may have been connected with Melchizedek, and its priest may have been called the Veiled Men, or the Priests of the Veil, a name that also meant wine priests. If so, such a priest was called a Chomer. And the pun in this verse is perfect, because a Chomer that was a priest and a Chomer that was a measure of volume would have been spelled the same, even if the term for such a priest was in fact Comer, or Comer sounds and looks like Homer, like Homer, enough to produce a play on words. Footnote for this. Margaret Barker has proposed a similar play on words between Comer and Chamor, as in several biblical passages. And if it means ass, then that also means that Balaam's ass, Balaam's priest. Chamor and Chomer can be spelled exactly the same in unpointed Hebrew, and the only difference between Chamar and Chomer is that the former has an initial kaf and the latter an initial chet, both of which makes K sounds, one slightly more aspirated than the other, hence the sound that I'm making. Jeez Louise! This just opens up the Old Testament so much. If only I knew Hebrew. And wordplay, and Aramaic, and Greek. Holy crap! There's a reason why we are missing so much. Holy cow! Well, holy donkey in this case. Jeez. I will never look at, vineyards anymore, towers anymore the same way, asses anymore the same way. I mean, literally, the donkeys, not... I will stop with the jokes on that level for right now, but holy cow. Okay, so towers, vineyards, slime, daubed, all gonna be totally different to me. And fermentation and wine, and the same roots, fermentation and wine. Oh my gosh. So Asherah, trees, Asherah, vineyards, wine presses, donkeys. fruit of the vine. Oh my gosh, when they sit there and say that all these scriptures point to Christ. Mm. 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 They ain't kidding. Holy cow. Okay. Take a breath. Holy cow. All right. The upshot of this is that the barrenness that reduces the daughters to a single member, the seed of Comer priest, or a seed of a Homer priest, make an ephah. An ephah is, you guessed it, a measure of volume. Yeah? But it also looks a lot like, and here's what I'm waiting for, Ephes, which means zero. The word Ephes is, in fact, appears in verse 8, meaning zero or no room. So the daughters of Zion are reduced to one. The seeds of a Comer priest or a Homer priest is zero before Isaiah is called. In this sterility of priests and driving away of gods, there is a pointless feast. Quote, okay, now the measurements are going to mean a lot more as well. Because bat, the seed of a Homer, will yield an ephah, so the seed of a priest. So, oh my gosh! Holy cow, I'm gonna need to read this book semi-annually, like every other year, to just remember all this stuff. Holy cow. Homer, oh my gosh. Okay, all right, so here's the pointless feast. Quote, woe unto them that rise up early in the morning, that may follow strong drink, that continue until night, till wine inflame them, and the harp and the viol and the tabret and the pipe and the wine are in their feasts. But they regard not the work of the Lord, neither consider the operation of his hands. Isaiah 5:11 through 12. Operation here is ma'aseh, the doing. This is not the Shalem feast, because Shalems proceed to move forward to grasp the Lord, to be pulled into the kingdom of God. These feasts have wine and music, but the Lord's hands have no part in what they do. Not knowing how to hold the true divine feast, they hunger and thirst. Now, therefore my people are gone into captivity, because they have no knowledge, and their honorable men are famished. And their multitude dried up with thirst. Therefore hell hath enlarged herself, and opened her mouth without measure. And their glory, and their multitude, and their pomp, and he that rejoiceth shall descend into it. Isaiah 5:13 through 14. The honorable man, it's actually singular here, is kavod, the glorious one. It's, sorry, I'm just checking out the footnotes here, so next big footnotes are on the next page. All right. It's the same word that is translated as glory in Isaiah 4:5 and Isaiah 6:3. Glory is a feature of the temple. So here both the glorious temple, man, and the crowd perish for lack of the feast. The second gate, the abyss, the filthy river, the way that leadeth to destruction, therefore yawns wide. Nevertheless, judgment will come. Quote, and the mean man shall be brought down, and the mighty man shall be humbled, and the eyes of the lofty shall be humbled. But the Lord of hosts shall be exalted in judgment, and God that is holy shall be sanctified in righteousness. Then shall the lambs feed after their manner, and the waste places of the fat ones shall strangers eat. Isaiah 5:15 through 17. The feast will be renewed. So that's the end of the quote. The feast will be renewed, and the gods restored to their homes. their rooms in the temple. Possibly only one, but possibly as many as 3 gods are mentioned here. Yahweh, Zavat, you'll see this as Sabaoth, is Yahweh of the armies, the Lord of hosts. He's the God at the head of the stars as a military force. We also have Cha'el HaKodash, which the King James understands as the God, the Holy One. But since one of the names of Asherah is Kudshu, meaning holy, maybe we should read those words as El and also holiness. Maybe the reader is intended here to see 3 gods, Yahweh, the Son, as war leader, El as the father, and Kudshu as the mother with many names. Now, we come to the terrifying heart of this chapter. It wasn't terrifying already? Isaiah describes a grievous sin that he has witnessed. Quote, "Woe unto them that draw iniquity with cords of vanity, and sin, as it were, with a cart rope, that say, Let him make speed and hasten this work, that we may see it, and let the counsel of the Holy One of Israel draw nigh, and come that we may know it." Isaiah 5:18-19. Roberts, in his commentary, says it's hard to figure out exactly what the sin being alluded to here is. He's mistaken. Isaiah describes the sin in brutal physical detail. Sinners drag something with a rope. That something has, until this point, been concealed. And the cry of the sinners is, "Hurry up! We want to see it!" They demand that the counsel of the Holy One of Israel come out. The counsel. That's another one that will never remain the same. The counsel of the Holy One of Israel come out, which tells us that the counsel of the Holy One of Israel is the thing that hasn't been seen. And why do they want it to come out? That we may know it. Oh. This is a savage and heart-rending scene. But we need a little more information to be able to see it clearly. The Holy One of Israel is Kadosh Yisrael. This is generally understood to be the name of God. And that may be right, since Kudshu is another name for Asherah, or wisdom. It's possible that Kadosh Yisrael here is meant to refer to her. More tellingly, what is the counsel? Counsel is Etzah, and it looks a lot like Etz, which means tree. In fact, sometimes Etzah is translated as trees, plural. Compare the words printed in Hebrew. Yitzah. Again, right to left, with the Y-like thing. The one on top is counsel. Etzah, the one on the bottom is tree. The one on top is counsel, Etzah. The one on the bottom is tree, Etz. The second letter, the one in the middle of Etzah, the one on the left of Etz, is actually the same letter, tzadi, which makes a different form at the end of the word. The only spelling difference between the two words is the letter at the end of Etzah, on the left, the he. This is an H, and it's only there to hold an A sound. What is the meaning of the HE and its A sound, the he and its A sound? The letter he can make a word feminine, or it can indicate possession by a woman. In other words, he can mean hers. For technical grammar reasons, I prefer here the reading that this is a feminine tree, that is to say, the tree lady. In other words, the cry of the sinners can be read as, "Let the tree lady of the Holy One of Israel draw nigh and come that we may know it." Here we have some footnotes. For 60, where he says, for technical grammar reasons, it says, in this verse, the noun etzah is in construct state. In grammatically correct Hebrew, we would not expect to see a possessive suffix attached to a noun I construct in a construct state. For the let the tree lady of the Holy One of Israel, or the tree lady of Kudshu of Israel, draw nigh and come that we may know it. Footnote. As a side note, understanding that counsel is a name of the great goddess of Israel affects our reading of many passages in Scripture. Here's an interesting example. In the Old Greek Bible, all of the titles in Isaiah 9:6, the ones we sing in Handel's Christmas masterpiece, apply them to Jesus, are replaced with a single title, the Megalos Boles Angelios, which means messenger of great counsel. Or as we say it, counselor. Consider Moses 7:35, where God says that a man of holiness my name, man of counsel is my name. Know that man, ish, in Hebrew, means in specifically masculine roles, including husband, bound at all, ish. Read Moses 7:35 again. Actually, let me see if I can read Moses 7:35 again. Great price, Moses 7 and 35. Behold, I am God, man of holiness is my name. Man of counsel is my name, and endless and eternal is my name also. Wow. Wow. This is the thing that has been hidden, and is now being dragged out with ropes. The menorah, the seven-branched tree, has been behind the veil in the Holy of Holies, where the later visionary men know it belongs. Now it is being dragged by the wicked into view in front of the veil, which is to say, into the second room of the temple. Since the tree with 7 branches is the tree of life, is Asherah, Kudshu, wisdom, and counsel, this is what 2 Kings 18:4 means when it says that Hezekiah cut down the Asherah. How does Isaiah feel about this sacrilege? He puts this cry into the sinner's mouth. Quote, "Let the tree lady of the Holy One of Israel, or the tree lady of Kudshu of Israel, draw nigh and come, that we may know it." This is strikingly similar to the cry of the men of Sodom, demanding that Lot send out his angel guests. "Where are the men which came into thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them." Genesis 19:5. That we may know is the same word in both verses, nedah. Isaiah is deliberately echoing the verse from Genesis. This is not a polite request to know God's plan. It's not the story of some casual rearranging of furniture. It is a vision of a howling mob that wants to rape a divine being. This is why Isaiah tells us in chapter 3, quote, "The shew of their countenance doth witness against them, and they declare their sin as Sodom. They hide it not. Woe unto their soul, for they have rewarded evil unto themselves." That's Isaiah 3:9. The sinners don't hide their blasphemy, they're proud of it. They brag about it. For instance, in 2 Kings 18, 4 through 5. This is the confusion of the houses. One of the dwellers in the Holy of Holies is being dragged into the wrong house. This outrage is why ultimately all the gods will abandon the temple, leaving it empty in the hands of those who have taken it. Isaiah continues, "Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, and put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter." Isaiah 5:20. Obviously, the wicked who brag about their sin are calling evil good. Also, when they move, Samim, they put the great light from the third room into the second. They are plunging darkness for light and light for darkness. The Debir that was once light is now a dark cave, and the Hekal that was once dim now contains the bright light of the menorah. The exchange of bitter for sweet also reveals the sin that has been committed, and moreover explains the odd feature of Lehi's dream, as understood and interpreted by Nephi, to see that we need to revisit an episode from the Exodus. Quote, "And when they came to Mara, they could not drink of the waters of Mara, for they were bitter. Therefore the name of it was called Mara. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, What shall we drink? And he cried unto the Lord, and the Lord shewed him a tree, which, when he had cast into the waters were made sweet." Exodus 15, 23 through 25. The name of the place is Mara. Mar in Hebrew means bitter. So we have another pun. The ah on the end just makes it feminine. The waters here are merim. Im, because they're plural. Mar is Hebrew word translated as bitter, both times in Isaiah 5:20. Moses puts a tree, an etz, that the Lord reveals to him in the waters, and the tree sweetens them. Sweetens them is weim teku, or weim teku. Yeah, it's QU at the end, so I'm not sure if it's teku or tek, but it's tekwa. Maybe it's tekwa, because QU is a kwa sound in English. So weim tekwa, meaning that he made them matok, meaning sweet. And Isaiah 5:20, the sinners in fact switch mar for matoch and matoch for mar. The presence of the tree revealed by God makes bitter waters sweet. When the sinners move samim, they put the tree from the Holy of Holies into the Hekal. They make the sweet waters of the Holy of Holies bitter, and the bitter waters of the Hekal sweet. This explains an oddity about the Book of Mormon that we have noted, but about which we have withheld comment until now. Lehi's dream has a fountain and a river of water. The water is beside the tree in the Debir, but it is also near the great and spacious building in the Hekal. In his vision, Nephi gains an understanding of the river as follows, quote, "And it came to pass that I beheld that the rod of iron which my father had seen was the word of God, which led to the fountain of living waters, or to the tree of life, which waters are a representation of the love of God. And I also beheld the tree of life was a representation of the love of God." That's 1 Nephi 11:25. Sorry, I was focusing on the verse again. Let's see here. The waters are the same thing as the tree. The waters are kudshu, counsel, wisdom, the love of God, the waters of life. But Nephi explains the waters to his brothers as follows, quote, "And they said to me, What meaneth the river of water which our father saw? And I said unto them that the water which my father saw was filthiness. And so much was his mind swallowed up in other things, that he beheld not the filthiness of the water. And I said unto them, it was that awful gulf which separated the wicked from the tree of life, and also from the saints of God. And I said unto them that it was a representation of that awful hell which the angel said unto me was prepared for the wicked. 1 Nephi 15, 26 through 29. In this explanation, the waters are the wide gate to hell, the filthy abyss into which sinners can fall. How can both things be true? How can the waters be the love of God and also hell? The explanation is Exodus 15. The presence of the tree makes waters sweet. In the absence of the tree, the waters are bitter. This apparent contradiction in 1 Nephi corroborates our reading of Isaiah 5:20 and tells us that in Isaiah's day the wicked moved the tree of life and shattered the true order of the temple. Isaiah has one more sin to call out in this chapter. Quote, "Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. Woe unto them that are mighty to drink wine, and men of strength to mingle strong drink, which justify the wicked for reward, and take away righteousness of the righteous from him." Isaiah 5:21 through 23. These sinners give themselves the temple title of wise, even though they participate in the pointless feasts of the drunkards. What is it they do exactly? The Hebrew calls them Matzidechai Rasha. The Matzedikim, the I ending is just a grammatical feature, the ones who make someone or something righteous, or the ones who call someone or something righteous. Righteous here is again the ZDK root, which is in the name Melchizedek. So we can read this as the ones who make a wicked man Melchizedek. This sounds like Isaiah is condemning the sinners. Not only did they move the tree of life and therefore shatter the temple order, they also inferred with the priesthood after the order of the Son, appointing a wicked man to the priesthood. And why did they do it? For a reward. The Echev Shochad. And the Shochad here can mean a bribe. The wicked put a bogus priest in charge of their bogus temple, and they do it for money. Because of these sins, God's judgment is coming. Wow. Wow. Quote, "Therefore, as the fire devoureth the stubble and the flame consumeth the chaff, so there," to me also, when I was reading about how they justify the wicked for the reward, they take away the righteousness of the righteous from him. Yeah, no, okay. I was thinking that they're trying to say someone is righteous when they're not, which is the same thing. But anyways, back to the quote of the judgments coming. "Therefore, as fire devoureth the stubble, and the flame consumeth the chaff, so their root shall be as rottenness. Root. And their blossom shall go up as dust, because they have cast away the law of the Lord of the hosts, and despised the word of the Holy One of Israel. Therefore is the anger of the Lord kindled against his people, and he hath stretched forth his hand against them, and hath smitten them. And the hills did tremble, and their carcasses were torn in the midst of the streets. For all this his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. And he will lift up an ensign to the nations from afar, and will hiss unto them from the ends of the earth. And behold, they shall come with speed swiftly. None shall be weary nor stumble among them. None shall slumber nor sleep, neither shall girdle of their loins be loosed, nor the latchet of their shoes be broken, whose arrows are sharp and their bows bent, and their horses' hoofs shall be counted like flint, and their wheels like a whirlwind, and their roaring shall be like a lion. They shall roar like young lions, they shall roar, and lay hold of their prey, and shall carry it away safe, and none shall deliver it. And in that day they shall roar against them like the roaring of the sea. And if one look unto the land, behold, darkness and sorrow, and the light is darkened in the heavens thereof. Isaiah 5:24 through 30. Note that stretched forth and stretched out hand of justice, 75. Yeah, if God can't trust Israel to do justice, he'll bring foreign nations against them to do it. Observe the strict justice implicit in the final verse, as the apostates have darkened the light of the kingdom of heaven by removing the tree of life from it. God, in his terrible justice, will darken the skies over the land, the kingdom of Judah. Here am I, send me. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Isaiah 1:1. We enter the last Isaiah chapter we'll read, and we'll run into a chronological question. I have argued that Isaiah 5 shows a royal apostasy in Hezekiah's day, and suggested that Isaiah 6 will now show the response. Isaiah 6:1 then immediately tells us that its vision occurred in the year that King Uzziah died, but Uzziah is Hezekiah's great-grandfather, and 30-odd years pass between Uzziah's death and Hezekiah taking the throne. How can Isaiah 6 show God's response to Isaiah 5 if Isaiah 5 happened more than 30 years later? The answer is easily. First, God's response might have been prophylactic. In other words, maybe God prepared Isaiah with his calling before the savage assault on the temple happened. Second, we need to realize that when reading any scripture, we're not reviewing the transcript of a closed-circuit TV camera. We're reading works of poetry. We've seen that wordplay and structure are used by Isaiah himself to convey meaning elsewhere. Maybe here Isaiah takes liberties with the strict chronology of events in order to construct a pleasing, meaningful literary unit. Third, if Isaiah really does find himself in opposition to a king he has called a blasphemer and rapist, maybe he's deliberately putting things out of their chronological order to conceal his meaning and lie low from Hezekiah's wrath. This would be consistent, for instance, with his instruction to prophesy in code. See below this chapter. Isaiah is in the temple. The Lord is on his throne. The ark, the cherub throne, if you prefer, is on his throne, the ark. His train fills the temple. Perhaps this is meant to be a reference to the cloud of incense rising from the altar in the Hekal. The word translated train is shuleo, his skirts. Elsewhere in the Old Testament, this word describes clothing worn by priests or women. So the Lord on his throne is either a priest or a woman, or both, or perhaps we are to understand that there is one of each. There are also angels. Okay, sorry, the reason I have a confused look on my face right here is in the discussions that they had in one of the earlier chapters, they were talking about, because of Nephi's vision that he has of the tree of life, in one of the earlier discussions they were having, they talked about, well, where's the throne? If this is a temple ascent in Nephi's dream, the tree of life is in the Holy of Holies, where's the throne? And they're like, well, the tree of life is there. And the tree of life is representation of, and it shows in the interpretation, Nephi is told, see the virgin giving birth, tree of life, and angels looking at him knowingly. And for them, they suddenly went, oh, there's the throne. And I was like, what? And they're like, look, here's the idea. Okay, if northern Israel is the place for the tribes of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, and they were about to be, wiped out and taken out, etc. And Lehi was specifically leaving because of all this blasphemous stuff that was happening to the temple. their whole language, ideology, etc., comes from Egypt, because they were taught the kind of reformed Egyptian. For them, seeing Mary, the mother of Jesus, they specifically say, oh, I saw a virgin with a child on his lap. What they're referring to is an image of Isis that's Egyptian, because Isis is literally like this throne goddess. She has on her hat a throne, and when the child is sitting in her lap, that is she being the throne for the upcoming child. And so with the angel showing Nephi, hey, dude, do you see Jesus Christ sitting in the lap of Mary? Or if you look at the Pieta by, I can't remember, I think it was Michelangelo, who was the sculptor, where Jesus has been slain and she's holding her son. That's Jesus Christ on his throne. You know, it's moving and it's tragic in the Pieta sense. But so when they're talking about this so the Lord is on his throne, is a priest or a woman, to me, I'm like, because of that earlier conversation, I'm like, well, yeah. And the train throughout is the train of the woman. So they're together. What allows... That's an interesting thing, because then you can sit there and think, does that mean that the seat of power of which has emanation is the fact that they're together, right? A throne without a king is a chair. And a king without a throne is just some dude, right? We could get into symbology that way and just run off in the weeds. But anyways, that's to me like, well, that's no problem. It's both. It's both together. Huh. Now it makes me start thinking about a lot of different thrones and depictions of thrones. Interesting. Subconscious or overtly conscious? Okay, anyway. Mine's going off on all sorts of rabbit holes, but perhaps we're to understand that there is one of each. There are also angels. Sorry, there's not two, but there are also angels. Quote, above it stood the seraphims. Each one had 6 wings. With twain he covered his face, with twain he covered his feet, with twain he did fly. And one cried unto another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the posts of the door moved at the voice of him that cried, and the house was filled with smoke. So again, houses probably means rooms of the temple, Isaiah 6:2-4. As discussed above, seraphim, burning ones, are snakes. They have 6 wings and also at least 1 hand, see below. We've already seen the suggestion that the seraphim here are a visionary form of the underlying physical temple reality of the Nehushtan, the brass serpent on a pole that Moses made in the desert. The same scholar suggests that the presence of at least 2 seraphim in the vision suggests that there was more than 1 Nehushtan in the shrine. The presence of 2 seraphim, this is a quote, and this comes from Robert's book. The presence of 2 seraphim in the vision raises the question whether there were actually a pair of pole-mounted winged serpents in the inner sanctum of the temple in Isaiah's time. The source of much of the imagery of Isaiah's vision appears to have come from physical realities that Isaiah regularly saw in the temple, unquote. This is a super interesting question and gets surprising corroboration from the Book of Mormon. We've already seen that the Nephite prophets knew the Nehushtan as a serpent on a pole, a device made by God for healing, and a representation of Jesus Christ. The Nephites knew Jesus as a serpent, but Lehi also taught them that Satan was a serpent. Quote, and because he had fallen from heaven and had become miserable forever, he sought also the misery of all mankind. Wherefore he said unto Eve, Yea, even that old serpent, who is the devil, who is the father of all lies, Wherefore he said, partake of the forbidden fruit, and ye shall not die, but ye shall be as gods. I'm butchering this. Let me reread the whole quote. The Nephites knew Jesus as a serpent, but Satan was a serpent. Quote, and because he had fallen from heaven, he had become miserable forever. He sought also the misery of all mankind. Wherefore he said unto Eve, yea, even that old serpent, who is the devil, who is the father of all lies, wherefore he said, partake of the forbidden fruit, and ye shall not die, but ye shall be as God, knowing good and evil. 2 Nephi 2:18. So, they knew that the devil was an angel who had fallen, who tempted Eve in the garden. And footnote for this, see also Nephi 9:9, 2 Nephi 9:9, and Genesis 3:13. The devil and the serpent and the garden both beguile, since 2 Nephi 9:9 also refers to the devil's resemblance to an angel of light. Maybe we should understand that Satan's appearance to Eve as a serpent was the beguilement. He deliberately approached her looking like the Lord in order to tempt her. See also Alma 12:4 and Genesis 3:1. The devil and his serpent are both subtle, or subtle, S-U-B-T-I-L, or subtle, S-U-B-T-L-E. Okay. That's right. All right. Who tempted Eve in the garden. All right. They knew that the devil looked very similar to Christ. Jacob teaching that he transformeth himself nigh unto an angel of light. It's challenging for us to realize that the Nephites knew both Christ and Satan as serpents, but the context of the course of the Lord helps us to understand it. There were two Nehushtan's in the Jerusalem temple. Those two serpents appear as two seraphim in Isaiah 6. During the course of the Lord, the two Nehushtan's were brought out as props in the drama. The adversary in room 1 carried and was one. Let me reread this section because I'm seeing too many different things and I keep parsing these, or splitting these sentences in different terrible ways. So from the beginning of the section it says, they knew the devil was an angel who had fallen, who tempted Eve in the garden. I read the footnote. They knew that the devil looked very similar to Christ. Jacob teaching that he transformeth himself nigh unto an angel of light. It's challenging for us to realize that the Nephites knew both Christ and Satan as serpents, but the context of the course of the Lord helps us to understand it. There were two Nehushtan's in the Jerusalem temple. Those two serpents appear as two seraphim in Isaiah 6. During the course of the Lord, the two Nehushtan's were brought out as props in the drama. The adversary in room 1 carried and was one Nehushtan, and part of his seductive appeal was that he appeared to be Christ, who would also bear a serpent when he appeared in room 2. This means that, at least in Nephi's understanding, and I think also in Isaiah's, Isaiah is called by Jesus Christ. Quote, then said I, woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For mine eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then flew one of the seraphims unto me, having a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from off the altar. And he laid it upon my mouth, and said, lo, this hath touched thy lips, and thine iniquity is taken away, and thy sin purged. Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then said I, here am I, send me. Isaiah 6, 5-8. The voice of the Lord might be coming from the seraph himself, who is Jesus. After all, one of the seraphim cries, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts, and the whole earth is full of his glory. And his voice shakes the building. This startling vision of Christ is at least part of the reason why Nephi says that Isaiah verily saw my Redeemer, even as I have seen him. As discussed above in chapter 4, I think this scene involving the incense altar makes reference to the feast for the Shalems. Maybe Isaiah is telling us that his calling took place at the feast. Maybe he's portraying the calling as an even more intense feast than usual, at which he eats fire. Jesus puts the coal on Isaiah's tongue, just as it is the one and not the one of the 12 who gives Lehi the book in the temple vision, which appears to have been Lehi's prophetic call. Quote, "And being thus overcome with the Spirit, he was carried away in a vision, and he saw the heavens opened, and he thought he saw God sitting upon his throne, surrounded with numberless concourses of angels, in the attitude of singing and praising their God. And it came to pass that he saw one descending out of the midst of heaven, and he beheld that his luster was above that of the sun at noonday. And he also saw 12 others following him, and their brightness did exceed that of the stars in the firmament. And they came down and went forth upon the face of the earth, and the first came and stood before my Father, and gave unto him a book, and bade him that he should read. And it came to pass that as he read, he was filled with the Spirit of the Lord." Yep. "And the first stood before my Father and gave to him a book." That was 1 Nephi 1, 8 through 12. The flying serpent who called Isaiah, the serpent who was allegedly broken into pieces by King Hezekiah, was known to the Nephites as Jesus Christ. It was Jesus who called the prophets when they ascended to see the council of the gods, including seeing Jesus himself. In Isaiah 4, Isaiah was called by the mother, the menorah. In Isaiah 6, Isaiah is called by the Nehushtan, which is the sun. King Hezekiah attacked both these divinities by desecrating their symbols, smashing the Nehushtan of the sun, and dragging the menorah of the mother from her place of honor. Isaiah is called to serve the deities under assault, and he tells us where his loyalties lie. Moreover, what is the complaint against the Nehushtan in the days of Hezekiah? We read that unto those days the children of Israel did burn incense to it. And we take this to mean that a formerly acceptable symbol had become corrupted. But what does Isaiah show us? The Nehushtan wings its way down from the Holy of Holies, and the house was filled with smoke. Isaiah doesn't specify that he's burning incense to the Nehushtan, but in the vision he's certainly burning incense in the Nehushtan's presence. Isaiah then receives a very curious instruction. Quote, "And he said, Go and tell this people, hear ye indeed, but understand not. And see ye indeed, but perceive not. And make the heart of this people fat, and make their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and with their ear, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and convert, and be healed." Isaiah 6, 9 through 10. With this instruction, we have come full circle. As we said in the first chapter of this book, Isaiah here receives an instruction to prophesy in a way that people will not understand. He does this by using the images and special language of the temple in his writings. Isaiah 5. The feast, wisdom, counsel, holiness, houses, the tree, and 6. The throne, the feast, seraphim, perhaps the skirts. Both contain examples. Those who know the images can understand what Isaiah meant. Those who do not have eyes to see and ears to hear are left ignorant, and none the worse for wear. Jesus, the teacher, understands this method of prophesying and says he uses it. We must revisit all the parables of the gospel in this light. We need to think about what our knowledge of the temple can contribute to our understanding of the parables. And we should also think about what the details of the parables might be telling us about the temple order that Jesus knew. Isaiah winds up with a passage, the meaning of which is greatly obscured by its translation. Quote, "Then said I, Lord, how long? And he answered, until the cities be wasted without inhabitant, and the houses without a man, and the land be utterly desolate, and the Lord have removed men far away. And there be a great forsaking in the midst of the land. But yet in it shall be a tenth, and it shall return, and shall be eaten as a teil tree, and as an oak, whose substance is in them. When they cast their leaves, so the holy seed shall be the substance thereof. Isaiah 6:11-13. The first two verses prophesy that complete desolation of the temple will occur before restoration. The cities will have no inhabitant being a Yoshev in Hebrew. We must remember that the title of the Lord is Yoshev HaCherubim, the dweller among the cherubim. The inhabitant who is missing is the Lord. The man or men referred to in both verses 11 and 12 are Adam. Adam will be taken from the houses, Batim, the roots of the temple, removed far away by the Lord when he left. The tenth that will return, the Assyria. This word looks and sounds somewhat like Asherah, but consider the rest of the verse for context. We are again in an arboreal framework, as we were at the beginning of Isaiah 5, with a teil tree, an oak, and a seed. The tenth that returns shall be like a teil tree, but teil tree here is elah. Even if you're not a Hebrew reader, this should by now be setting off your antenna. Dave, that looks like Elat, which is one of the names of Asherah. Dave, that looks like the name of God El, with a feminine ending added to it. You're correct. El-ah is actually listed in the dictionaries as a version of the name of God, but Ella, is goddess. In Assyria, that shall return in, I keep saying Assyria, but that's because it starts with an A, but it's Assyria. If it's supposed to be close to Asherah, it's probably Assyria. That shall return shall be like a goddess, like an oak tree. The oak is Elon, which sounds a lot like Elyon. El Elyon being the name of Melchizedek's god in Genesis 14:18. The substance, meaning tree stump, is mazabet. Elsewhere, this word is translated as pillar. For instance, the pillar Jacob sets up to commemorate his meeting with God is a mazabet. He names the place Bethel, meaning house of God. The pillar he sets up on Rachel's grave is also a mazabet. And mazabah is a variant of the same word. Before ascending through three-part space, including a feast with God in the second space and passage being the veil at the peak, Moses sets up 12 mazabah. These are standing stones erected for religious purposes to mark the presence of God. Notwithstanding their ascent heritage, Deuteronomy condemned these standing stones. Taking into account only the foregoing, we can understand the end of Isaiah 6 along the following lines. Quote, and again shall Asherah be in it, the land, and she shall return, and shall be eaten as the goddess, as Elyon, whose standing stone is among them, when they cast their leaves. So the holy seed shall be her standing stone. Isaiah 6:13, retranslated. We may not be to a full understanding yet, but Isaiah is prophesying that Asherah will come back. She will be a tree, and with her will come at least some of the old symbols. Structure of Isaiah's call, revisited. I'm just going to this is the end of the chapter, so I will show you this so you can dive into it, and you can get the scan for bonus content QR code, and then I'll end it here and I'll review the table myself. So here's the table. There's the QR code. You can pause and just review it. So, some final thoughts. I am. Pardon me. That was like dropping a bomb. I understand Isaiah a lot better now. I have a lot of stuff that needs to. I just really want to reread the Old Testament now, like thoroughly and slowly, especially when I see things piping up that I'm suddenly understanding now. But I mean, the huge bomb is just how why they did it. Like, Isaiah accuses them of doing it for a bribe. A bribe. Why? What was the bribe? Was it really just money? Was it prestige under the new regime of whoever was in charge? And how did they justify it? How did they justify it? It was probably them wanting to be as was it a corruption of the culture that they were like, instead of having a heavenly family, there can only be one, and that one has to be the God Most High, that he can't have a son, he can't have a wife, it's just him. He's the one carrying the weight, he's the one who did everything. Was it a fear of corruption? Was it a fear that too many people weren't taking things seriously, or that it's been like, when I look at these stories now, when I see what's been happening, I look at other mythologies that are out there, and I can see how it has vestiges of this. I can see how it is just. You can see the touch of the different key elements. Like, there's stuff in Japan. Japan is really young when it comes to histories that they have written down. Who knows if they had a great purge or whatever else. But there's certain, like, I back when I was first getting my degree, I had to take a histories class, ancient histories class, and I did a report on Japanese because I figured, hey, that'd be cool. I did not expect that certain ancient histories of Japan were relatively, like, really young, like only 700 years BC kind of thing. So not like thousands or everything else, especially with China across the way. The idea was that their concept that there may have been some indigenous people on the island of Japan, but they were completely lost because the people who would have been swept over from the Korean peninsula, and that's why you have a lot of similar cultural stuff going on between the two, a lot of genetic similarities, a lot of writing similarities, but there's certain ancient, like their ancient mythologies and stuff like that about different gods in the Shinto religion and stuff. There's stuff where it's like, that sounds strikingly like Adam and Eve in certain respects, but then there's stuff that's really weird about it. And then you have other stuff where it's like, there's this story about this kind of weird flood that seems to be very prevalent and all these different things that, well, sounds a lot like Noah, but it has its own little twists. It's really weird. It's really interesting to see that kind of thing when you go back into these ancient mythologies. Then you have other stuff like the Greeks and things where you can, again, you see these sprinklings of stuff throughout, and then there's others that are just, someone took it and ran with it. But I just, it is just fascinating to me. What's funny is that, so, because I was curious at someone's take on YouTube about, they were doing a specific kind of podcast about, well, where's the Divine Mother in the Bible? And he kind of gives some quotes and stuff. And he may have been heavily influenced by Dave Butler in his book, and he was showing them and kind of presenting them. One of the comments was one that I find common among just the generic population of the Church of Jesus Christ. It's one that's been passed around. You know how people kind of pass around a phrase, as in like, well, we kind of don't know, and so we come up with a really good idea, a stopgap measure. The idea, well, why don't we see Heavenly Mother in the Scriptures more? Well, because she's so sacred, they're keeping her safe. What if that wasn't the case? What if the idea was that she was prevalently put throughout it, completely, and it was expected everyone knew about it, until the reformers came by, killed the priests, devalued the symbolism, hid her away, specifically? What if it wasn't that they were trying to keep her sacred? What if they were trying to bury her and cut her down? And we have the vestiges, and because we speak English and we don't speak Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic, or understand wordplay in those languages, which is another level, we don't even have a chance. We don't even have a chance to really see it for ourselves until you got smart people that come by and go, hey, dunk, 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 guess what? I can appreciate the idea of keeping it sacred because it was supposed to be sacred at first. It was supposed to be the idea that, hey, there's a divine family, that we're all families. Families is a good thing. What better way to take an axe to the whole meaning of things than to destroy the family? Basic unit of society. Whether that's in the literal physical sense of let's break up the families, let's make divorces common, let's have people give up on being parents, whether that's through killing their children before they're born, or whether that's abandoning them afterwards, whether that's incentivizing women to be single women, or whether that's incentivizing just being extremely self-centered in a marriage, so marriages fall apart. And that's on both sides. That's on both sides. That the women don't want to give to the men, and the men don't want to give to the women whatever they're seeking. And so either one decides to walk out on each other. Well, that makes the cover art a lot more clear. Like, insanely clear. This is his cover art. So, yep. That is as clear as day. I cannot have that be any clearer. Jeez. There's still another chapter in here. We're really close to the end, but next is chapter 12. And that's going to be grafted into their mother tree, in the words of the prophet Zenos. And, oh, God. This has been an amazing chapter. And, oh, there's a chapter 13, too. An epilogue and an appendix. Oh, God. Crazy, amazingly good book. All right, love you lots. Enjoy.